to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings broadcast, and I am your information correlating host, Rick. So I titled this as correlation, and the reason being is because I've got to kind of be careful with what's being tossed around about the particular subject that I'm going to be dealing with. I don't know if I'm going to get cut off or not. There's a lot of conservative outlets that have been cut off here recently, especially due to some of the changes in the rules. So if I do get cut off tonight, I am streaming on Rumble, rumble.com/whiskey musings. I'm pretty sure that's where it is. But anyway, if you have any problems in any of my other outlets, go over there. Definitely go over there. They are a free speech alternative to YouTube, and I'm streaming there, as well as I will continue streaming on YouTube and Facebook for as long as I can. So if you're having issues, that's the place to go. That being said, so tonight, there hasn't been a lot of conversations about the origins of the particular pandemic issues that we are having, especially lately in the news. There's been some, but not a lot. And honestly, I think it's being skipped over by the mainstream media because a lot of people are, shall we say, just like not that interested. But I've got an interesting little trail of breadcrumbs to leave for you tonight. I've got a lot to cover. And so, bear with me, sit down, take a drink, and enjoy the correlating information that I am bringing to you. And especially this is dealing with the fact of the China incursions into Taiwan, and I'll get to that at the very end. But anyway, so the first order of business, of course, is to thank you, my subscribers, all of you, everyone, new ones, old ones, Rumbleians, YouTube subscribers, those that are subscribed to the audio version on Spreaker. I appreciate all of you because, of course, without you, this show wouldn't exist, realistically. And it's because I want to try and bring you relevant information and entertain you at the same time. Because, of course, my tagline is, when I drink, I think. And so I decided a long time ago, a little over a year and a half ago, to bring that information to you. So hopefully you find this show interesting, entertaining, and informative all at once. And just so you know, I mean, I'm not monetized on YouTube, mainly because I haven't gotten the views yet. But if you go over to Rumble does have what's called Rumble Rants, and they have super rants. They kind of run just like super chats. So if you go over to Rumble and you watch on Rumble, you can click the little money bag next to the message. So you got to sign up for an account. It's free. Obviously subscribe to me, but the little money bag next to the message box, you click on that, you can enter your financial information and give me a super rant. I will try and read those live on the air as that on the air, quote unquote, as that goes along. The other thing, of course, is that you can support my sponsor. I'll get to them in just a second. But you can also go to my store.whiskeymusings.online and purchase something there, some logoed gear or, the gear that has my name on it, or not my name, but my saying, when I drink, I think. And then, of course, Whiskey Musings. So help to support the show. I take the proceeds, I put them toward things like the phones, and I know I haven't used the phones in a while. But the shows have been kind of packed with information and that kind of thing. So I haven't been able to use the phones very often because I do not have the time. I try to keep this to right around an hour if I can, a couple hours for specials, things like that. As far as the phones for tonight, I've got a lot to go through, so I'm not going to bring them up. I'm not going to turn them on. But hopefully maybe next week. There's just a lot of news, a lot of political stuff, a lot of stuff going on. And I usually don't get involved with international news, but this one I've been kind of working on it, and I really wanted to get it out in front of you folks. So let's go ahead and kind of get started here. So the first thing, of course, is I appreciate the NCCA for allowing me to become a ambassador, and as such, if you honor and value our God-given right to self-defense by owning a firearm and would appreciate joining a community of like-minded individuals who welcome firearm owners of all experience levels, then you should consider joining the NCCA. The National Concealed Carry Association, NCCA, exists to serve the Second Amendment community by providing a nationwide network of Second Amendment advocates, offer elite self-defense and concealed carry training from the nation's top instructors, and provide rock-bottom prices on the best selection of gear and accessories. NCCA members enjoy shopping thousands of products with zero dealer markup, unlimited free shipping, and keep more money in their pockets with zero credit card processing fees. The NCCA encourages safe, responsible concealed carry, and celebrates those who are brave enough to protect not only themselves, but their families and their communities. If this sounds good to you, visit nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com to join today. As a special bonus, use my affiliate link, ncca.refr.cc/Rick, RACK02, to receive a code for 10% off any purchase at nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com. Once again, use my affiliate link, ncca.refr.cc/Rick, RACK02, and receive a code for 10% off your purchase at nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com. Visit nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com. It's all spelled out, all one word, all lowercase, to find out more today. Thank you, NCCA. Now, okay, so as I pointed out last week, I do have right here in my social media accounts. Please give me a follow. Go ahead, and that's where I kind of announce when I'm going to be talking, when I'm going to be broadcasting, those kinds of things. And sometimes I post memes and comments and other things out there. So do me a favor, check that out. Now, last week I started a little segment. I'm not going to do that segment tonight. It had to deal with reading out of the American Almanac, which kind of sucks because I sort of want, it's got something pretty good in there, but realistically, I wanted to get everybody's juices flowing by showing a ad that was put out by We the People Wine here recently. And this is their ad. I own no copyright to it, but I am going to play it because it is very poignant. And let me go ahead and get that up. And let's hope that, yep, okay. So let me go ahead and play that for you.
My fellow Americans, it looks like some things have changed. Are we doing a good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents?
You want an abortion? Get one!
Younger parents aren't sure that an appreciation of America is the right thing to teach modern children.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
When I drive into a neighborhood and there are American flags, it's a message of white supremacy.
I'm warning of an eradication of the American memory that could result in an erosion of the American spirit.
We need to completely
dismantle the police department.
If we forget what we did, we won't know who we are. We've got to do a better job of getting across that America is freedom, and freedom is special and rare. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise. As long as we remember our first principle and believe in ourselves, the future will always be ours. Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government, and with three little words: we the people. We the people are free. Once you begin a great movement, there's no telling where it'll end.
All right. So I'm probably going to get dinged. I'll be honest with you for the music in the background, but God, I can't think of the guy's name, but anyway, I think the group is called Wayra or something like that. But anyway, I don't own that copyright either, but I'm going to probably get dinged by YouTube because of it. Doesn't matter. They're just going to monetize me. I don't care. I'm not really monetized by them anyway. So, doesn't that get your blood pumping? Doesn't that like get you going in terms of, hey, this is America. This is what it's all about. Now, that speech was by Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was president from 1980 to 1988-ish, because of the obviously changes and things that happened. But he was probably what I would consider the last true non-globalist president that we've had in a lifetime. He was in my lifetime. He kind of came in right about the time when I started really recognizing things like politics and things like that, although I didn't necessarily care about them. But it's when I started to realize, at least recognize that they were there. I did actually send a letter to him when I was in elementary school, and I did get a letter back. Don't know if it was his. I don't think it was his writing. I do know that he tried to reply in his own handwriting in a lot of cases. Much respect for that. But unfortunately, this one was sort of more of a form letter kind of idea. He, likely he got hundreds of thousands of letters, to be honest with you. So I wasn't, being an adult now, I wasn't necessarily expecting that, but he did spend time in a lot of cases to sit down and write letters back to people who had written to the White House. And of course, this is all long before the internet was even, an inkling in anybody's eye. The whole idea of electronic mail and that kind of stuff. So anyway, but I do appreciate this. I do appreciate the people, the We the People Wines who put together that video, because it really embodies kind of what's going on in today's world and especially in today's political climate. We are not going to have a republic for very long if we keep allowing stuff like this to go on. One of the things that has, to sort of bring this around to tonight's topic, one of the things that has occurred that has put a stop, let's say, on a lot of our forward thinking and things that are happening, of course, is obviously the particular pandemic that we are still technically in. CV-19, that particular situation, there was a lot of rumors, a lot of things running around about where this thing came from. It was a novel bug, and it was something that we had never seen before. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is I've been trying to put some things together, because obviously as time goes on, we get more information. I mean, one of the things that Denzel Washington accused the media of is that they were more interested in being first out, and not so much in getting it right. I personally want to keep getting it right. I want to get it right. So I try to hang back until I can figure out what's going on, or until I can see enough evidence, enough information to make an intelligent decision. And that's what I like to try and do for this show, is I like to try and put things together for you. That being said, let's go ahead and start right off the top. And honestly, so this is not really, I mean, it is in a certain kind of order because I'm trying to tell a story. So some of these things might be bouncing around in terms of dates, but One of the first things that I think we need to be aware of and recognize is the fact that our intelligence services at one point went ahead and got a hold of somebody from China. And now this guy, he was a Chinese defector. And let me just kind of give you a little bit of a background here. So he came over here to visit his daughter in within California. She came over and was doing university. She was at the school, and he came over here to reportedly to visit her. And while he was here, he ended up being picked up by the Defense Intelligence Agency and the DIA, and they took him, and he is defecting. This man's name is, he worked as a vice minister of state security over in China, and his name is Dong Jingwei. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this article here, in particular, is talking about it. By the way, for anybody that doesn't know, all of the articles that I am going to show you screenshots, etc., of, they are all in the description below. So you can go ahead and go out and check them out. This particular one comes from Red State, I believe. Let me check. I got to check here. I believe it is Red State. And anyway, so yes, it is. It's from Red State. And so Dong Jingwei was a defector who came over, and he brought with him a bunch of information. I mean, just a slew of information on China and everything else. So what did he bring? Well, here's a list of what Dong Jingwei has provided. I'm going to read this out for those of you who are on the audio portion of the program. So in addition, Dong Jingwei has provided the DIA with the following information: early pathogenic studies of the virus we now know as SARS-CoV-2, models of the predicted COVID-19 spread and damage to the U.S. and the world, financial records detailing which exact organizations and governments funded the research on SARS-CoV-2 and other biological warfare research. Now, this is important. Biological warfare research. Names of U.S. citizens who provide intel to China, and some other things, financial records showing businessmen, public officials, so on and so forth. Honestly, he brought just a crap ton of information. Now, he's, as far as I know, he's being debriefed. And he is obviously still in seclusion, etc. Which, he should be, considering the amount of information that he's bringing to us, or at least that is reportedly being brought to us. But the key here is to keep an eye on the two top bullet points in terms of the origins of SARS-CoV-2 and the models of the predicted spread and damage. Now, he came over here a little early, and he had information on this stuff. So he was picked up, I believe, in February of 2020. So having that information, it kind of makes you wonder, okay, well, wait a minute, could they have done this outside sources, or could have been something that was a little more planned than that? Don't know, not really certain on it, but it does kind of beg the question: if he already had this information, why is it that he, first of all, that he had it in February? So if the virus wasn't technically announced until December of 2019, and he has information on this in February of 2020, where did he get the information? So that's a question. It's a question for us. All right. So moving on to my next, as soon as I can get there, because I'm computer illiterate. Okay. So Kyle Becker of Becker News has brought up this little thing. For those of you that haven't really been following this, so there's been suggestion that we've had gain of function. I'm sure some of my Patriot fellows and some other people have been watching, like Senator Rand Paul's destruction of Fauci, and what he knew, when he knew it, et cetera, et cetera. this is kind of interesting in terms of this particular thing. So this was published in June 7th of 2021 in Becker News. And it's talking about the Wuhan lab's secret military activity leading to a February 2020 COVID vaccine patent. Now, for those of you that don't understand, in order to be able to file for a patent, you kind of have to have the information about what it is that you're going to, or that you have created, or that you are going to create in order to gain the patent. You're going to have to explain everything to it. Now, the interesting thing about this, though, is that the Australian, oh, goodness, that was way too big. All right. So the Australian reported that, honestly, that they reported on the Friday before the June 7th date, that the U.S. paid for the People's Liberation Army to engineer coronaviruses. Don't know where that came from, but the implications of the Pentagon funding such a dangerous research in authoritarian China are sweeping and profound. Now, the quote here is, national security sources said ties between Zhu Yuzhen and Dr. Shi Zhengali, aka the Batwoman, supported claims by U.S. intelligence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, cut back in WIV, was engaged in, quote, secret military activity, end quote. Now, we know now that, you know, the NIH funded a third-party group. That third-party group got sent money over to Wuhan Institute of Virology. It was not specifically, according to Fauci, it was not specifically tagged for gain-of-function research. However, at the time of Fauci testifying before the Congress committee, he basically said he had no knowledge of this. You've got to understand that there's a connection between Fauci, the guy that's in charge of that third party, Peter Daszak, and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There are pictures that are out on the internet where Barack Obama and Fauci have photos taken of them in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So obviously there is a connection between the U.S. and Wuhan and WIV in terms of what we might be funding. I mean, the only purpose for the president to go over there would be to verify or check on something that the U.S. government might be spending money on. So there are indications, of course, that that this is true, that the Pentagon is funding, the U.S. government is funding some sort of research. Now, what kind of research, we don't really know 100%, or we didn't know 100% at the time. Now, to continue with the quote here, Zhu, who conducted the research in conjunction with the Wuhan Institute, the University of Minnesota, this is interesting, and the New York Blood Center. So those are three named people. She was the first, or he was the first, to file a patent for COVID-19 on February 24th, according to documents that were obtained by the Weekend Australian. So this, and they tell you right here, this last statement, this was only 5 weeks after China admitted there was human-to-human transmission of the virus. So within 5 weeks, all of a sudden you have a person who files a patent. Now that patent, of course, has to detail everything about what it is that this person is doing, at least the way that it works here in the US. So I can't imagine how this individual would have known or understood all of the ins and outs of this patent to be able to file for it without having the research in there. So let's hang on to that for just a second. Let's move on. Now, there was some question within the article. There was some question about how a vaccine could have been developed so quickly, and there was a gentleman by the name of Professor Petrovsky who was queried by the Weekend Australian about what had happened and how is this possible. And he basically said, while it is possible, he says, quote, this is something we have never seen achieved before, raising the question of whether this work may have started much earlier. So, and further down, a little bit down in this quote of the article, the plot thickens. One of the scientists involved in the research, Zhu Yuzhen, was the subject of a, quote, unexplained, end quote, death in May of 2020 after a probe into the origins of COVID-19 had begun. So think about this. So this person, whoever this was, filed for a patent for COVID-19 5 weeks after the virus was said to be released in the world. And a little bit later, after they filed that for that patent in February 24th. So February, then March, and now they're in May, and all of a sudden this person is reportedly dead from an unexplained death. So this is kind of interesting as to how this stuff came about. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty certain, I'm fairly certain that research doesn't happen this fast, and these things don't occur quite this quickly. So obviously this person, whoever this person is, they must have known about the coronavirus virus research and possibly even the gain of function. Now, what would be the purpose of getting a vaccine? Obviously, we want to save people. We do want to save people, but these are indications that there were things that somebody somewhere that people knew ahead of time. So now, the Wall Street Journal, further down in the piece. So here, the Wall Street Journal had a op-ed that was by two scientific researchers, and I'll get to that in just a second. But they took a look at the genome sequencing of the virus, and they broke it down and basically said there is a section of the genome that doesn't appear to occur naturally. In fact, at the time of the reporting, it has never been found in natural environments. So it more than likely was created in the lab. Here's the quote. The CGG-CGG combination has never been found naturally. That means the common method of viruses picking up new skills called recombination cannot operate here. This is what they wrote in the Wall Street Journal. So, okay, so the CGG-CGG combination, let's kind of focus on that for just a little bit, because the fact of the matter is that is a interesting combination. It has been used in gain-of-function research elsewhere. And if you recall from anybody who might be tracking this, there was some conversation from people at the NIH to Dr. Fauci about the potential lab-created genome. This is the genome they were focused on. And this is where they basically said, hey, this looks really funky. This doesn't normally happen here. So going to the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece. So here we have a rare genome sequencing almost certainly proves that COVID was deliberately made in a Chinese lab before it leaked to the world. Now, in looking at this, there was another article that was pushed out that somebody had said, or there was another set of experts that basically said, no, it can happen. It does happen naturally. It can happen naturally. Well, the fact of the matter is they're not saying that it can't happen naturally. They're just saying that they've never found it naturally. So realistically, I mean, whether or not this can or can't happen, it's still something that is used in a man-made environment. So we have to kind of keep focusing on this. So in this particular opinion piece, they kind of go into a little more explanation about what that CGG-CGG combination is. And so here's kind of the crux or the synopsis of the article itself. So the COVID-19 has a genome sequencing combination CGG-CGG. Two U.S. experts say that no naturally occurring coronaviruses have ever had that combination. The CGG-CGG combination is extremely rare, except when it is used by scientists doing gain-of-function research in laboratories. The experts conclude that it is more likely than not that the virus was therefore created in a lab, and many of the world's top scientists have pushed to determine whether the virus was leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, what's interesting is when this first came out, you'll have to remember, Trump actually said, I think it was created in a lab. And he was immediately poo-pooed by none other than Dr. Fauci. Fauci basically said that there was no way that this could have been created in a lab, that it was naturally occurring. There was no way it could be, done in a lab. And here we have some other experts who have basically said, yeah, actually it did. It did come from a lab. It was genetically modified. Okay. So further down in the piece, they kind of break this up a little bit in terms of, and I'm going to try and not get too deep in the weeds, but you need to understand a little bit about this. So first of all, it says from the piece that there's 36 DNA segments made up of 3-letter words that viruses use to make an amino acid known as L-arginine. L-arginine helps make proteins, but is also often used in so-called gain-of-function research, which alters the viruses to make them more transmissible and more deadly. That's what gain-of-function means. Now, I don't know if anybody was watching Rand Paul, but Rand Paul really kind of raked Fauci over the coals. And Fauci tried to, at one point within their conversations and everything over the course of many days, Fauci tried to tell Rand Paul that he didn't know what he was talking about. That was kind of rough. I don't think that was the case. But so that being said, this particular setup is often used, these people are claiming, for gain-of-function research, okay? It's altering the virus in order to make it more transmissible and more deadly. Now, the new virus contains a segment called CGG, which is considered rare even in experiments in which researchers are trying to manipulate the virus. So not only is it rare in nature, but they are also claiming that it's rare in researchers. So this is just another little indication that potentially could set somebody up for the idea of where this came from. So if the Wuhan Institute of Virology uses this on a regular basis and it's rare to do this, then that would even further indicate that this thing came from a lab, and specifically probably came from this lab. So that's a question. So they continue here saying that what's even more telling is that this combination has never been found naturally in any other type of coronavirus, including both SARS and MERS, both of which are cousins to this new virus. So Quay and Mueller, who were the article writers, they basically say, quote, a virus simply cannot pick up a sequence from another virus if that sequence isn't present in any other virus. So their argument basically is that, hey, this doesn't show up in any of the other coronaviruses that we have that are that naturally occurred, that so it's not naturally occurring. It doesn't show up in coronaviruses that are cousins to this one. There's no way that a virus can create this from just out of thin air. It has to have some sort of basis in communication with other cousin viruses, and that it's commonly used. This particular setup is commonly used in labs in terms of gain of function research. But even though it's used in labs, it's used rarely in labs. So this is all kind of lining up here to sort of show us where this thing came from. So this graphic here, I'm just going to show you, kind of gives you an idea of where the placement of the CGG came from within the genome. But the funny thing about it is that I don't know if anybody heard this little bit of news, but the Wuhan Institute of Virology tried to say there was no way that this thing happened, and they offered up a genome from a bat that they claimed was the one that created this, that naturally spread this particular coronavirus. But the funny thing that's interesting is that the genome from CV19 and the supposed bat genome, they don't match. And what's conspicuously missing is the CGG-CGG combination. So this is kind of an indication that maybe the WIV is trying to cover things up, okay? Bear with me. I know this is getting deep in the science, but you got to bear with me. I'm trying to tell a particular story here, okay? Like I said, correlating. I'm correlating these bits of information to put them together into a nice, neat little package. All right. So moving on. Now, there's some more evidence that has popped up. Kyle Becker kicked this off just recently here on October 4th. Smoking gun evidence. China was preparing for COVID outbreak months before pandemic spread worldwide. Well, now, wait a minute. If these guys didn't know, so let's think about this. If these guys didn't know that this was here, it naturally occurred, and then all of a sudden, popped up in the end of December like they claim, then what would this smoking gun evidence be? Well, turns out that there was a report that popped out from Internet 2.0, and they're an organization. Now they're not in any way science related as far as scientific, but they're data gatherers and data correlators. And what they did is they published a study or a report that basically said, hey, we noticed all of a sudden that the area that Wuhan's Institute of Virology is in all of a sudden started buying up a whole bunch of PCR tests way before they claim that the virus was actually released. And so that's what this is talking about. So quoting from the piece, new smoking gun evidence has been provided. There was a surge in PCR tests for coronaviruses purchased in the Hubei province, where Wuhan is the capital, months before the Chinese Communist Party or Chinese Community Party, they say, acknowledged the novel SARS-CoV-2 virus's existence in December. So, okay. So for everybody we all know what the PCR tests are. They are to test for coronaviruses. In particular, PCR tests have been used, especially all over the world, especially here recently, within the last year, to test for SARS-CoV-2. All right. So all of a sudden, somebody found out that, hey, wait a minute, the capital of the province of Hubei, Wuhan, and the whole Hubei province is all of a sudden buying a bunch of these tests that are specifically for testing for coronaviruses. Interesting. And they were testing they were buying them months ahead of when China announced or China said, hey, this thing, this novel virus popped out. So this is kind of interesting. We're starting to follow the trail of breadcrumbs, right? All right. So from the piece, it is strong information for making the case that there was awareness of a virus outbreak around Wuhan several months to half a year before that December. Akira Igata, a visiting professor at Tama Graduate School of Business in Tokyo, who examined the data independently, told the writer of the piece, Nikkei Asia. So this report could provide an opportunity for countries to press China for information again, she says. However, the PCR test purchases are just one piece of the puzzle that shows definitively that communist China let hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people die needlessly due to its delayed coronavirus reporting. Now, as a part of, they're buying up all these PCR tests and they know something is happening over there. I mean, this is pretty obvious. They're looking at a specific type of virus that the PCR test can detect. Boy, this is getting deeper and deeper by the minute. Can't you just feel it? All right. So all of this information was thrown together as a part of a report. And this was a subcommittee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the minority staff. They put together a report. The lead Republican was Michael T. McCall. And what they did is they were commissioned originally by, I believe they were commissioned originally by Trump, but Biden definitely is a part of it. Biden commissioned this and basically said, look, we need to find out where this thing came from. The final report was released here recently, and the origins of all of the investigations and all of this information and everything else has come down into a report. This is a final report. I have actually, I've provided both copy links, I believe, the original report and then the final report. This was just updated here recently. So check this out. It is, and this is coming from the report. It is beyond a doubt. It is beyond doubt that the CCP actively engaged in a cover-up designed to obfuscate data, hide relevant public health information, and suppress doctors and journalists who attempted to warn the world. Now, I don't know, just taking that statement, I don't know if you recall, but there were some doctors in that who were trying to tell people about the coronavirus outbreak. There were doctors in China that were on record, and some of those articles are out there, or were out there. I don't know if they're still here or still there, but they were out there and they were talking about how this thing, popped out and this is dangerous and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, all of that information is kind of gone. Now, to get back to the piece, they deliberately and repeatedly disregarded their obligations under the 2005 IHR. It must be some sort of a international health thing. I haven't looked into it, but senior CCP leaders, including General Secretary Xi Jinping, knew a pandemic was ongoing weeks before it was announced. By responding in a transparent and responsible manner, the CCP could have supported the global public health response and shared information with the world about how to handle the virus. It is likely the ongoing pandemic could have been prevented had they done so, saving hundreds of thousands of lives and the world from an economic meltdown. As more countries began to question the CCP's official accounting of the early stages of the pandemic and call for an international investigation, the People's Republic of China has used economic manipulation and trade coercion to demand silence. Now, okay, honestly, if you've done something wrong, you're going to try and cover it up. If you've done something wrong, you've done something wrong, you're going to try and cover it up. It's no different realistically than anybody. If you don't know that you've done something wrong, you have no reason to try and cover anything up. Or if you haven't done anything wrong, you have no reason to try and cover it up. What's the purpose of a cover-up? Cover-up is to hide data, hide information, hide blame, and everything else. So if they covered it up, if China covered this stuff up, which it seems that they have, and this report has basically indicated that, then they obviously knew something. Okay. So we have indications now that they knew about it. They knew about it ahead of time. They knew about it long ahead of where we were announced in terms of December. They knew. So that means that they also are the ones who've been researching this stuff, and that's been shown. That has been demonstrated. So the question becomes, why were they researching it? What is the point of researching it? And we'll get to that in just a minute, but let me continue with this report. So McCall released an addendum to the origins here in 1st of August in 2021. And this is a quote from the addendum piece. This was the press release for it. And this is a quote as a part of the press release. Quote, as we continue to investigate the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, I believe it's time to completely dismiss the wet market as the source of the outbreak. Okay. So, I'll be honest with you, that it was a conspiracy theory back in early 2020 that this thing could have been released from a lab. The wet market theory was pushed by the mainstream media. The wet market was where this thing came from. It was a naturally occurring virus, but I don't know if anybody knows this, but I'm going to throw this out there too. They've proven the bats themselves were not sold in that wet market. they've proved that the bats themselves are 300 or something like 600 kilometers. The closest known colony is 600 kilometers away from Wuhan. So there literally is absolutely no way that this thing could have occurred on a naturally occurring basis. We have the genome combination. We have the Wuhan lab buying PCR tests. We have, the vaccine patent. We have, there's no wet markets carried the bat, the type of bat that was even recommended or even said to have carried this thing and had it created naturally. I think I've pretty much beaten a dead horse here. This thing was created in the lab. We know it. We all know it. It's done. You cannot tag something that is being misinformation or partly information, because this is factual evidence. This is evidence. And I know it's hard for some people to follow, but this is actual evidence. Okay. Now, instead, so going back to the report, as this report lays out, a preponderance of the evidence proves that all roads lead to the WIV. We all know gain of function research was happening at WIV. We know it was being done in unsafe conditions, and this is actually something that there's evidence that they asked for upgrades to the lab in September, early September, about it. We also know that the head of the Chinese CDC and the director of the WIV's BSL-4 lab publicly expressed concerns about safety in the summer of 2019. So that would be, July, August, September, or June, July, August, somewhere in there. And McCall continues here. Representative McCall continues. It is our belief the virus leaked sometime in late August or early September. When they realized what had happened, the Chinese Communist Party officials and scientists at the WIV began frantically covering up the leak, including taking their virus database offline in the middle of the night and requesting more than $1 million for additional security. I don't know what to tell you. This is incredible. Okay. And to even tie this up even further is the fact that we as Americans funded it through some of our tax dollars in order to develop this gain of function research. What was the purpose of this? Honestly, what was the purpose of this? I mean, I can understand, okay, we'll do gain of function research to see if, and to try and combat it in case somebody else does this gain of function research and like creates this same thing. We want to have a vaccine. That's a plausible explanation for this, but seriously, funding the whole thing, and better yet, entrusting it to one of our enemies. I mean, this is like crazy. This is nuts. Continuing from that press release about the final report, it is also concerning the scientific community told the American people for more than a year it was impossible to modify a virus without leaving a trace when this technology existed. Now listen to this. More than 14 years before the pandemic began. Okay, wait a minute. Remember what I told you. There's photos of Barack Obama and Fauci in Wuhan. And this has been existing more than 14 years before the pandemic began. Now, the quote continues, as this report lays out, researchers at WIV, Wuhan, were also able to successfully modify coronaviruses without leaving a trace as early as 2016. Now, that was right before Donald Trump got elected in 2016. He was in the process of going through and doing the election cycle. Obviously, he got voted in November of 2016. Now, interestingly enough, there was an article that I saw that popped out that was from Fauci. Fauci stated in that article that Donald Trump is more than likely going to face a pandemic during his election cycle, during his presidency. What the hell did that guy know? Honestly, what did he know? What the hell did he know? They were able to modify them as early as 2016, right before Trump was elected president. And Anthony Fauci says, oh, he is likely going to face a pandemic. And the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the province, starts buying up PCR tests in early, like May of 2019. Okay, I'm sorry. Why? First of all, why is anybody still listening to this Fauci character? And number two, why is he still walking around and not having to answer for some of this shit? Pardon my French, but this is an internet show, so I can cuss, but I don't normally do this. But this is amazing to me. And how anybody can sit here and say that he had, number one, no knowledge, number two, that he didn't have any idea in terms of the funding. Why are we not questioning on this? Okay. Now, I'm going to finish this. Therefore, it is no longer appropriate for anyone to dismiss the notion that this virus could have been genetically modified before it leaked from the WIV. So basically what they're saying is, based on all available information, these guys who are part of our government, they see this. I mean, this is sort of like a trial. This is like laying out all the evidence. People, I cannot stress this to you enough. Fauci knew it. He helped fund it. The government knew about it, knew about the gain of function research way back in Barack Obama's era. They knew what they were doing. They knew. And they're allowing this, they allowed this to kind of happen. I mean, realistically, in terms of the, was it leaked on purpose? I don't know. I doubt it, but you never can tell. But the shoddy way in which Wuhan was handled and their request for upgrades very, very quickly, that kind of indicates they sort of knew something was going on. Why is nobody being called on the carpet for this? Honestly, why have we not backdated or pushed, Chinese tariffs or something like that to pay for this? This is absolutely ridiculous. You want a Watergate scandal? This is a Watergate scandal right here in front of us. Okay. Now, there's further highlights from this report. I got to shrink this down a little bit. So there's further highlights from this report. And I'm going to run through several of these. So we have significant concerns about lax of safety protocols. We have multiple requests for maintenance at Wuhan. That their new facility, and they had a new facility that had been operational for less than 2 years. Some of them requests included maintenance on the environmental air disinfection system and the hazardous waste treatment system, which indicates concerns as to how these systems were meant to prevent lab leaks and how they were functioning. Okay. The scientists at the Wuhan were conducting gain of function research at BSL 2 and BSL 3 safety levels. Those are obviously safety levels. A BSL level 2 lab has the same safety protocols as a dentist office, according to this report. So think about this. Next time you go to the dentist, just look around and see what safety protocols are there. Do you honestly think that somebody should be performing gain of function research, meaning create something that is more transmissible and more aggressive and potentially more deadly in an office, in a dental office? Think about that. Anyway, so they've been scientifically able to genetically modify coronaviruses without leaving a trace on that modification since somewhere around 2005. Okay. Scientists at the Wuhan Institute successfully modified coronaviruses without leaving a trace as early as 2016, 3 years prior to the actual outbreak. Now, here's where it really gets weird. Okay. Remember, I said there was Fauci, who is the head of the NIH. And then you have Peter Daszak, who is the head of that third party that actually funded things. At the request of Wuhan's researchers, Peter Daszak attempted to hide his close association with Wuhan while he referred to anyone in the scientific community who said a lab leak should be investigated as promoting a conspiracy theory. So this is the one guy, this is the first guy that kind of talks about, hey, you know what? We shouldn't even be talking about a lab leak. We really shouldn't. And Fauci went ahead, because he's his buddy, he's Daszak's buddy, said, yeah, okay, I'll downplay it. There was emails that came out where they talked about it, and Peter Daszak sent Fauci an email and said, hey, Fauci, thank you for downplaying the whole lab leak theory. There's a reason for that. This guy probably knew. Holy crap. All right. Now, Xing Li. Okay, remember her. She was the one she's the Batwoman over in Wuhan. She's repeatedly lied about the gain of function research that's been done at Wuhan, the People's Liberation Army's presence at Wuhan, the timing of when she sequenced the virus that is closest known relative to SARS-CoV-2 in order to hide what they knew about the virus prior to the pandemic, safety protocols that were supposed to be followed, but they're not, and why Wuhan took their virus database offline on September 12th in 2019. People, okay, whether this was intended or not, it may not have been intended to be released at this point in time, but you have to wonder, what the hell were they doing with this? What was it that they were looking at, and what they were trying to do with the whole idea of this type of setup? Now, there was another report, I don't have a screenshot of it, but there was another report that said that about 6 months prior to when the lab leak happened, the Wuhan Institute was planning to take a spray and spray bats with the virus with the idea of making it jump from bats to humans. Okay. This should be an incredible story. The mainstream media should be all over this thing. This is one of possibly many potential Watergate type scandals. Now we have evidence that not only did they know that they were doing this, but they were doing this way back in 2005. So that tells me that the funding actually was done at an earlier time, that Barack Obama, as president, may have known what they were going to do with this. So there's a potential that he may have already known this. I mean, I don't know. This is kind of shocking. All of this stuff is kind of shocking, especially when you try and correlate it together. Holy crap. Okay. Now, so I have to ask myself as I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all of this and I'm going, what in the heck is happening here? I had to go and try and figure out what would be the purpose of this. I mean, obviously the People's Liberation Army was there, the PLA. They were a part of this, but what would be the point of the CCP doing it? And honestly, a couple of things popped into my head as I took a look at, now that we have data on what the virus does, who it impacts, etc. Kind of had a feeling that maybe this was engineered for a purpose. Now here I'm going to kind of step out on a limb here. I'm taking this a little bit farther, and I'm going to go over my hour, but I'm going to take this a little farther. This is really important. So one thing that has happened in the last year and a half, 2 years, is that China's well-known law where they limited couples to only one individual, to having one baby, which had been it was long-standing for a very long time, but then all of a sudden they reversed it and they've opened it up, and I think they're now at the point where they want 2 or 3 kids. Okay, but one of the reasons as to why this might be happening is because of the fact that they have an aging population. And this article here by John Hayward, published back in 17 of March of 2021, kind of talks a little bit about that, where they're expected to raise the retirement age as demographics shift. Oh, it's a little big. Let me cut it back. Okay. So China is expected to raise the retirement age. What would be the purpose of raising the retirement age? Well, obviously one thing is to make people work longer. So why would they want to do that? Okay. What would be the purpose of this? Well, one thing you got to understand is that everybody is over in China. They are all employed by the state in some way, shape, or form. Is it possible? Is it just possible that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has run the numbers and found out that they might have a problem paying this stuff back. I mean, our own Social Security is pretty much dead, mainly just because of the fact that we have a boomer generation who is getting ready to retire. They're coming down to it, and we just don't have the money. Not just because of the fact that our government had dropped it into the general fund and has been stealing from it, but even more so, we don't have the same amount of people paying into it that we used to. That the boomer generation, in our words, is gonna make a drain on our system. Okay, China might be hitting that as well because they've been limiting, in an effort to try and cut back on the number of people within the country, in a form of population control. They've been limiting the amount of kids that can be had. And so if you think about it, trying to limit the number of kids, now all of a sudden you have a limit on the next generation and the generation after that, and the generation after that in terms of diving into the workforce. That's what this article kind of mentions. And let me just show you this. So Voice of America News noted Wednesday that China will soon be dealing with over 300 million retirees, a population that rivals that of the entire United States. We only have roughly 330 million people. Okay. So their retirees are going to come close to equaling the entire population of the United States, all ages. Okay. Now, providing them with benefits under current planning will cost over $1 trillion, more than Beijing could possibly come up with, especially since the working age population is declining. Keyword, declining by about 3 million per year. And that pace is accelerating as the generation that was not born fails to show up for work. Efforts to jumpstart population growth after a lifetime of ham-fisted mandatory abortion policies have not been successful. The Chinese population kept declining even after restrictions on childbirth were lifted and the population continued to age. So basically what this means is that they don't have enough workers to replace the workers that they've got, that are going to supposedly create or get the money to pay these retirees to be able to keep funding their retirement plan. And this is the exact problem that we've had here for our Social Security that we've been talking about here in the US for many, many years, other than the fact that our government has been dipping into what should have been savings. But this is a really key thing. Now, further down in the piece, obstetrician and gynecologist Fujian Yi, I'm sorry if I mismeet the words, author of a book criticizing the one-child policy called Big Country with an Empty Nest, noted China's population is effectively aging faster than any other in the world, while its workforce experiences one of the steepest declines. So this person went ahead and took a look at this and is like, okay, hey, we don't have enough people to come back into the workforce to backfill the amount of money that we're going to have to run out for retirees. Okay. Bear with me. I know this seems like it's a little bit off topic, but keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay. Now, another thing that popped up on my radar in thinking about why would they create this kind of a virus? China's housing conundrum. This is from Kenneth Rogoff in September 29, 2021. They wrote, and again, all these links, they're in the description. The Chinese government may yet succeed in insulating the broader market from the financial crisis. What financial crisis? Wait a minute. At real estate giant Evergrande. But the larger challenge is to rebalance an economy that has depended for far too long on the bloating housing market for jobs and growth. Now, okay, why would housing have a problem? Well, if you go back to that declining population that they were talking about, they've been building houses all over the place. They can't get people to fill them. Okay. They have more housing than what they need in terms of their population, because again, going back to declining growth. So China's housing market is about to burst. It's in a bubble and it's about to pop. So why would this be important? Well, check this out. This is in the piece. Moreover, real estate is by far the most important savings vehicle in an economy where where capital controls constrain citizens' ability to invest abroad. Any significant decline in real estate prices would lead not only to widespread disaffection, but also to a potentially significant pullback in consumption of other goods and services. Okay, so let's think about this. Wuhan has been commissioned by the U.S. government and other entities in order to create a gain of function research on certain coronaviruses. All right. Now, we have an aging population. So China is trying to combat that by raising the retirement age. All right. And they raise it from 5 years. They do from like 55 to 60 for men, 50 to 55, I think, for women. The piece kind of explains it. That's honestly not that important, but they have an aging population. That population is about to retire. You have a housing market where a lot of people have gone and invested and have their own little nest eggs that is about to burst bubble wise. So I'm just going to throw this out here. Is it possible? Is it possible that this virus was created in order to help with the aging population in China? It was released early to start getting rid of retirees and people to stave off, or have as one fork of this setup, to stave off the potential money issues that they're going to have with these retirees, with this real estate bubble bursting. Is it entirely possible that this could be why? Okay. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if that was the purpose of this, but I have a feeling that this might have something to do with it. And I can't believe. So let's take a look at how this virus actually impacts people. Now, I'm only going to look at the US numbers. And the only reason I want to look at the US numbers, even though they are fairly relatively consistent throughout this space, okay? It's fairly consistent throughout the world, all right? But I'm only looking at the US numbers. So here is the death by age group, okay? And this is only data. This is CDC reported data. I got it from the CDC website on coronavirus. But the data from 575 plus thousand deaths, the age group was available for most of them, about 99% of them. Look at this graph. Look at the age group as to where this virus really affects people, okay? People are dying who are essentially over the age of 40, 30, 40, 50. As you get older, it starts going up. Kids under the age of 30, and I'm calling them kids because my age is obviously, I'm older. Under the age of 30, they're not dying from this thing. They're getting sick, potentially, yes. And the older you get, the higher risk you have of potentially getting sick. But all of the young, they're not getting sick. This does not affect young people. This does not affect children in the same way that it affects adults. Okay, especially elder adults. I don't know how somebody can look at this and go, you know what? Okay, so we have this thing that was built in a lab. It was used gain and function research. This thing is totally brand new. It's using a genome that is only in a lab. You have all of this stuff tied together. You look at the death rates in each level. I mean, honestly, I don't understand. I really don't understand how somebody can take a look at this and not see that there is potentially an evil and nefarious purpose for this thing. It's amazing to me that nobody is, not a single person on our mainstream media is correlating any of this stuff. And I bring it to you tonight. Now, feel free, go ahead and take a look at all of the information I've presented, look at all of the articles and everything else. But I'm telling you right now, and I believe this is my last. Yeah. So, I'm telling you right now, there was a reason for this. I hate to say it, but a nefarious purpose was done in this particular segment of society. We're looking at China as being a friendly now. This administration believes China is more friendly. They're not. I'm sorry. They're an enemy. They're an enemy of the world. They're an enemy of the state. They really, this just kind of proves it. They created this thing. They released it onto the world, mistakenly or not. They still did it. I believe that it was used for a purpose. I believe it was created for a purpose. There's no reason to create something like this without having a purpose. And the way that it was built, the way that it affects people, I think personally, it was designed this way. It was made to do exactly what it's doing, taking out people who are indigent, who have comorbidities, who have issues. I mean, if you look at the comorbidities, COPD, diabetes, extra weight, all of these different things, that's only 3 out of, I think, a list of like 5 or 6. I think this was created. I think it was done in a lab. I think it was released upon the world, accidentally or on purpose, don't care. But it was released upon the world, and the result, the overwhelming result is to try and cut back on older people. Now, why the mainstream media is not asking questions about this, I have no idea. Honestly, don't. I would like to know the answer to some of this, but I'll be completely honest. I don't think anybody is really going to get an answer. They're definitely not going to get anything back from it. But I do want to point out, though, that as far as like the deaths are concerned and everything else, I mean, we're talking about, 700,000+ deaths in 18, 19 months, almost 20 months of this thing here in the US. The predominance of those have been older people and people with comorbidities. I don't think the research was quite done yet. I don't think that they had perfected it yet. And I also think that we as Americans are crazy to think that this thing is really necessarily that bad. There are people who are affected by it. I'm not denying that. There are people who, but honestly, I mean, the majority of us are going to live. Honestly. I mean, the percentage, the death rate even if you go break it down per 100,000, you're still looking at a 0.00213% chance of dying from this thing. Hospitalizations, yes, they are going there, but we don't have to live in fear of this thing. I'm sorry. I'm not going to live in fear of this thing. This is nothing more, honestly, than the flu if you're in decent health, if you don't have any comorbidities, and you take care of yourself. Those are what the medical facts are bearing out. And I do believe this was created in Wuhan. It was created specifically to do exactly what it's doing, but it may not have been created or may not have been intended to be released yet. Fact check me. Go ahead, fact checkers. Take my YouTube channel off the internet. I don't care. Because these are the facts. These are correlation of information that's available and out there. And that, my friends, is my final Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Do me a favor. If you find this informational, entertaining, of any benefit in any way, please subscribe. If you don't want to subscribe, but you still like it anyway, just do me a favor. Tell your friends, family, neighbors, whatever. Have them come and watch. I know I'm not for everyone, but at the same time, I do appreciate people for coming and looking. I appreciate all the people who have subscribed, all my Patriot friends who have subscribed. You know who you are. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Rumble in particular, and subscribe at Facebook as well. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Gab. I'll be back next week with another Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.